It's 26 degrees here in Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory. Welcome to Sunrise Daily, your daily dose of sunshine. I'm Maupe Ogun Yusuf.
Today is January 16, 2025. It's exactly 9 o'clock going to 9:01. I'm Ayo Makini. Good morning and welcome to the program. So, Maupe, you're taking us up north today.
Indeed, Ayo, we're going all the way to Kano State, but not just Kano, not just anywhere in Kano, but a very strategic piece of infrastructure, which is somewhere right on the outskirts of Kano, linking up three very important states in the northwest to the northeast of the country, because this interchange you see here at Wudil in Kano State is very strategic. It's strategically placed. If you're coming from Kano, it takes you to Dutse in Jigawa State, which is still in the northwest of the country, but then it also takes you to the northeastern state of Bauchi. So what you're seeing right now is a very strategic piece of infrastructure placed in Wudil in Kano State. And you can see right there the land that just, surrounds that piece of infrastructure. For those who have any kind of eye for farming, they know that this is ideal and very strategic land for those who will be farmers. What do you see, Ayo? Please don't tell me another movie.
Well, you can't deny. Look at it, Maupe. Just please look at it. Take a long shot and then you zoom in. Yesterday, one of our colleagues here, Akisoji, showed me a drone shot he took. He was standing in front and the drone shot went all the way up and to show the entire scenery. So, you can't deny it. Just come on, Maupe. Look at this. If anyone told you that this was shot somewhere in Texas, are you going to deny it? Come on. But that's not the only thing I see. I see opportunities. As a matter of fact, we've been talking about this infrastructural shortage over time. This, as you said, linking three states, was certainly something to celebrate, and for every government in Nigeria, federal and state, to also look at and say, how can we replicate such massive infrastructure? Look at that area of land. Just look at the land, Maupe. Look at what we have in our country. And let's just imagine, what can we do with all of these? They are natural resources. This is not just bare land. This is a resource. The question is, what can we do with them? What can we do with all of these? If anyone, for instance, wanted to shoot a country movie here, they're going to have a field day. I'm just saying. But look at that infrastructural shortage that we've had over the years, and the fact that it's going to take us a while to cover the gap that we have in infrastructure. Then this gives me hope that we're not doing very, very badly. We just need to have our eyes on the ball, and we need to be flint-faced on what we want to do. If anyone ever thought that Kano State or any northern state is nothing but ashes and thatched houses with brick muds or your mud bricks, think again, because this is Kano State and is not even the center of the city, Maupe.
Indeed, it's not, Ayo. It reminds me of a trip I made sometime to New Delhi. Between New Delhi and I'm trying to remember the name of the city now. But all you just see, it was something like this. It looks exactly like this. You will see farmlands, stretching for as far as the eyes can see. And what you see are also these trees dotting the farmlands, where farmers oftentimes take a rest when the heat of the day, becomes a little too much. But I think that for those who, want to say we're getting serious about agriculture, while we're, placing very strategic infrastructure in different places, one of the things that we should also be interested is what we're doing with the land around it. I know that around, in some parts of the country, security has now become a major issue. And so, even lands around the expressway, where you have transport infrastructure, you find that we're clearing out the trees. But as much as possible, I think it's important that we see how we can convert those lands to something that will be useful for agriculture, as we're seeing here, because what you clearly can see, you can see ridges in those lands. It means that the people of Kano are doing their best to make the most of the gifts, the natural gifts that the Almighty has endowed them with. But this is where we are this morning. We'll deal in Kano State, looking at this interchange and admiring it from the skies, you know, taking you to Dutse in Jigawa State or taking you all the way to Bauchi in Bauchi State. So just in case you're wondering, Bauchi is the capital of Bauchi State. We'll take a break at this point and we'll be right back. Please stay with us. Well, we're going to start with an issue of the day. Well, just yesterday was the Armed Forces Remembrance and Celebration Day, or you can say Celebration and Remembrance Day. But we're going to a matter that is bordering on human rights and a controversy that has spilled over from last year. One of the major issues that happened last year were the August protests, also known as the End Bad Governance protest. And some of the things that came off of that protest were how the protest in some instances went out of hand, police high-handedness in that protest. It's unclear how many people lost their lives in that particular protest because different parts of the country carried out the protest in different ways. In some places it was orderly, in some other places it went out of hand. And so there have been controversy as to how many people lost their lives. The Nigerian police maintains that no one lost their lives, but not for the National Human Rights Commission and not for Amnesty International. And only recently, Amnesty International released a statement talking about how many people lost their lives in that particular incident. However, the Nigerian police has not been happy about that particular statement and has asked Amnesty International to apologize and retract their End Bad Governance protest report. Something which Amnesty International and a lot of other human rights society view as intimidation, a threat, and harassment. Well, we're going to be talking about that now and the general civil society space, what we're doing in terms of human rights violation or upholding human rights in Nigeria. And we have with us this morning a senior advocate of Nigeria, Mr. Jibrin Okutakba. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Nigeria.
And we also have with us Mr. Anwar Rafsanjani, who is the Executive Director, CISLAC. You're also welcome to Sunrise Daily as well.
Thank you very much and good morning.
Your agency, I beg your pardon, your NGO, was one of the 59. A lot of CSOs signed up to that particular statement, warning the police to desist from intimidation and harassment, and also making an appeal to the president. What exactly has informed your statement on this? Do you really consider this harassment and intimidation?
Thank you very much. Civil society organizations in Nigeria are worried with the way and manner in which some security agencies are actually doing everything possible to silence, intimidate, harass, and bully, students who simply perform their civic responsibility as a responsible and patriotic citizens in Nigeria. We all know what happened during the End Bad Governance protest, where we witnessed loss of lives and properties. And Mr. President, in two of his speeches, he had actually acknowledged that there was killing in Kano, Jigawa, Borno, and Kaduna, and other places. This is Mr. President acknowledging, and he said that I am very pained with the loss of lives and even destruction of properties in these places. Secondly, Mr. President also, when some policemen are incarcerated and maltreated the minors, and they were brought in to the courts, Mr. President, in his own speech as well, expressed concern and worried. And in fact, he said that this matter must be investigated, and every police officer or security agent that was involved in detaining minors, maltreating them, and also involved in the killings must be thoroughly investigated and will definitely be punished. Mr. President further said that there will be a committee that will set up, that will be headed by Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, that will look into this issue, hopefully with view to ensure compensation of these victims as a result of this protest. So with all the statement made by the president, some people in the police who are determined to demarcate Mr. President and demarcate our country, they have dismissed what the president have said, and they went and do a report by themselves without any public involvement, without any government agencies involvement, to come up with the report. They have come to dismiss all that even the president had acknowledged and that the country have witnessed. That is why we are worried and concerned with the letter that somebody in police have written to Amnesty International, warning and in fact threatening to take legal action and other appropriate action against Amnesty International. You are not actually threatening Amnesty International. You are actually further dehumanizing the nation, trying to send another wrong signal to the international community that our country has no rule of law, have no respect for human rights. This set of police officers are undermining Mr. President and are also undermining the Inspector General of Police, because what they have done, even at the court, where they say that the children that as a result of hunger and maltreatment they received, they emaciated and they could not even stand very well, and people saw how they were even struggling to eat biscuit in that place. One policeman there, he was saying that they are all adults, they are all married, these are minors. And Mr. President had acknowledged that these were minors and that all the police that were involved in this, they must be faced with law. Now somebody will now go and write or counter Mr. President. I think it's very disrespectful, and it is not good for the nation, and this will not deter human rights community. And not to even mention the fact that National Human Rights Commission actually mentioned that about 28 people were killed. Not only that, several newspapers covered that protest and they made several reports. If you take Vanguard, you check Premium Time, you check Arise News, and even the channel and many Nigerian media, they've reported the killings and the loss of lives, and destruction of properties as a result of that. And for any reasonable person to now come and dismiss that nothing had happened, I think it is tantamount to undermining even the integrity of the nation.
Okay, well, some people will say, I'm looking at, excerpts of that particular report now, and some people say maybe it's not so much the report itself, but the manner in which it accuses the police of being the mastermind of, the killings. He says people in Nigeria witnessed unbelievable lawlessness as security personnel fired live ammunition at peaceful protests. The death toll could be higher than 24 because of the authorities' desperate efforts to cover up the atrocities. Peaceful protest over government policies is now a matter of life and death in Nigeria. It says that police fired live ammunition at close range, targeting the head or torso of protesters. These are some of the findings that Amnesty International published in that report. Do you think it could be the direct accusation of the Nigeria police that they frown at, or do you think that let me put it at that?
It's not about the style of killing. What is important is that human lives have been lost, and some people perpetrated that act of atrocity, and therefore they must be responsible for that. And Mr. President had actually told the nation and the whole world that they must be investigated for killing, for detaining children and arresting and maltreating them. Are you saying that Mr. President does not know what he is doing? Listen, wait. Are you saying that you have not, your men who are being seen in television, in social media, seeing policemen, some policemen who are untrained, as far as I'm concerned, doing as if they are in a war, shooting as if they are confronting, a war? I think the issue is that what we expected Nigerian police to do, since Mr. President has instructed that there must be investigation on this, the police should not be the one to investigate itself. The police should not be the one to come out without involvement of the public, the victims of the killings, family, and even the general public, as well as even the media that had extensively covered that incident. I thought what the police should do is to do the honorable. If you will not come out to apologize and pay compensation and discipline those errant policemen that have carried out these atrocities against, especially the minors, what I expected them to do is just to keep quiet. This threat that they have done to amnesty has rather now escalated the problems that Nigeria is having, the reputational problems that we are having. You remember just last month, one, Kemi, the Labour leader in the UK, look at the kind of bad, image she has portrayed on the Nigerian police. She's a
conservative leader.
Conservative leader. So I'm saying that we need to avoid situation that will make Nigerians and even international community to disrespect our institutions. We need to do things with the integrity. You cannot do this because children
again, Mr. Rafsanjani, let me go to Mr. Jibrin Okutakwa here. You're officers in the Temple of Justice, and I know that, they say every lawyer is a human rights officer. You're concerned about upholding human rights. For you, when you hear this type of matter, are you concerned, because there have also been talk around the shrinking civic space in Nigeria. Do you share that concern, or do you think that the police are well within their right in this instance?
Well, Maupe, I think the challenge that the Nigerian society has is the challenge of pretenses. We pretend a lot as a nation. Those in power pretend to be very pious, very holy, doing what the law says they are doing, whereas the practical reality on the ground suggests otherwise. And so, like Alwa rightly pointed out, the reputational damage to the image of Nigeria as a nation, given the kind of conduct being displayed by police authority towards Nigerians in a situation where Nigerians are exercising a constitutional right of protest, a constitutional right of complaining, a constitutional right of bringing to the knowledge of government that Nigerians are facing excruciating pains in their society, a constitutional right to complain that all is not well with us, with governmental policy, with the conduct of law enforcement agencies. The police are becoming more Catholic than the Pope, so to speak. The duties and responsibility of the Nigerian police is to, one, protect, defend, and detect and prosecute crime. But where a police institution began to attach to itself or arrogate to itself the power it does not have, that lies the problem. For anyone to deny that during end bad governance protests, life were not lost, it suggests to me, with profound respect, an act of irresponsibility. The first thing you need to do is to acknowledge your wrong and learn to amend so that subsequently nothing happens. Like Awa had rightly pointed out, if the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, the highest citizen of the land, acknowledge in his speech to the nation, and for us even something that looks like an apology from Mr. President, that lives were lost, then an institution that's supposed to be the one that will acknowledge that indeed its officers did something wrong, is now defending the officer in a manner that suggests irresponsibility, then Nigerian citizens should worry. So second point I think I need to make is that the Nigerian police seems to be the enemy of itself, because if you look very well now, the civic responsibility that's supposed to be performed by the police are invariably being overtaken by other security agencies. It's only in Nigeria, for instance, that in a civil protest, you see AK-47 on the road, in the hands, and you are threatening as if you are a subhuman being. So in other words, in this country, profound respect, lives means nothing to those in authority, because those in authorities appears to have acquired the power of an emperor. The king does no wrong, so whatever they do is correct. And the reasons for all of this, my opinion, is that Nigeria is about the only society I know that those who commit wrongs go scot-free because there are no consequences for misbehavior. Otherwise, in the civilized society where people respect law and order, the rule of law holds sway, when people are protesting and demanding and asking that the conditions of service, condition of living, the living condition be improved, for me it amounts to aggravated murder for you, whether you shot on the legs, anywhere you have used your gun, paid by taxpayers' money to kill those citizens. The full weight of the law must be brought to bear on those officers. I'm not saying that all Nigerian police are bad. It's getting to a level now that to even offer a harsh criticism of government, including saying that it will not be well with those who have done A, B, C, and D, including those who are not in power but are closely related to those in power. The police are now terming such cursing as cyberbullying, cyber stalking, and so on and so forth, contrary to section 36 subsection 12 of the Nigerian Constitution that says that nothing is an offense except the penalty for doing so is prescribed in a written law. There is nowhere in Nigerian law that says if I say that it will not be well with A, B, C, and D, that is living a life in ostentations while I suffer indignity in the hands of the state that's supposed to protect me, and you term that as cyber stalking, and you now go to television stations to say that that is an offense in a democratic society. I don't think so. So I think Mr. President needs to, in conjunction with the highest organs of the Nigerian police, educate our policemen and women. Because when you even have the misfortune to board public transport and you see the attitude of the police towards some persons and thinking that they can take your life and nothing happens, it should worry us, because no person of reasonable investment intention will come to this country and invest when there is lawlessness. So for me, nobody in power loves Nigeria more than any other Nigerians. Some of us that are here are not of any dual nationality. In fact, I came to this your studio deliberately this morning.
I like the green, white, green.
Yes, to show that I love Nigeria. Nigeria is the only country that I love, because when you travel out, the economy situation there, even the food you eat, is not as natural as the food in Nigeria. Nigeria is a land of opportunity, but what we are lacking in every sector is leadership. Once our leaders, including security leadership, are behaving nicely, listening to citizens, hear their grievances, not treating them like second-class citizens, and thinking that they are more superior than the rest, Nigeria will be the best. Not many people today who want to volunteer information about crime, because once you volunteer it, you will be the first suspects. And so the training is required. not a blanket denial, threats against those who speak the truth, because you cannot cover the truth.
It is very interesting. So you do agree, or you do agree with those who say that the civic space is shrinking?
Not only shrinking, it's suffocating. And when you see the kind of arrest being done, and I'm worried that there are serious crimes that the Nigerian police should be worried about than who sits under his what do you call it now, using your laptop to speak rubbish. How have they done to nap in the bond? Kidnapping, terrorism. What have they done for those who are living beyond their means, those who have unexplained wealth? For instance, Section 7 of the EFCC Act gives power and authority to EFCC, for instance, to come to a man or a woman that is having property more than his income to explain. Are we not seeing a lot of people who enter politics poor are now multi-millionaire? Do they have the guts to ask them? I think that, with profound respect, it does appear to me that the more you are wealthy, even in an unexplained manner, the more you get protection. And the more you are poor in this society, the more you are antagonized, you are brutalized, you are handcuffed. The more you speak truth, that this is what is going on, instead of the security agencies and those in power to listen carefully to the cry of Nigerian, what you see in most cases is bullying.
Well, this is not making any case for any side, so to speak, but we do have history. With protests in Nigeria, a very long, rich history of people protesting. Very recent history, though, has not been very, favorable. When you think about the End SARS protest, the fact that Nigerian people have not been very happy with the services of the Nigeria police, especially the SARS unit. We saw what happened in 2020 and how that protest got out of hand. We also know that there were repercussions as a result of that, both for the police and the Nigerian people. And a lot of things were left unresolved. Never mind the fact that in a lot of states, there were also, panels of hearing, panels of inquiry to find out what was happening and also to try and compensate those who had suffered injustice, over the years. But a lot of things were still left unresolved in terms of, equipping the police, making sure that they're well trained, making sure that they're well remunerated. Those things that have still been left undone. Well, we move now to 2023, where another protest was, about to be carried out. And I do remember that there was plenty of anxiety, particularly because people were uncertain as to, who the masterminds of this protest were, who were the people who were going to be leading the protest. It did raise quite a bit of anxiety, and not just within and amongst Nigerians, because a lot of people suffered losses from the End SARS protests, which went out of hand much later. It wasn't just in Lagos where people died and there was destruction, but also in other parts of the country where there was just bad behavior all over the place. So there was that anxiety in 2023. Do you think that it is as a result of the unresolved nature of what happened in 2020 that we saw that because it wasn't in all parts of the country that the protest went out of hand for the End Bad Governance? It was only in certain sections. Do you think that could have affected how the police in those places reacted?
Okay, first and foremost, we as civil society, we advise both the protesters and also advise the Nigerian security agencies, particularly the police, that why can't you even escort and guide and protest the protest itself? Because if the police have actually protected and guarded the protesters against anybody that is likely going to come and disrupt or do anything outside what the protest was meant for, then you will know that that person has an agenda. But the inability of the police to listen, to actually protect the protest itself and the protesters, that was what gave opportunity perhaps to some people who have other intention. Otherwise, the protest was a legitimate protest. And what was this protest? People were tired of insecurity. People were tired of kidnapping. People were tired of hunger. The real hunger is actually in the land. You can see that even during the Christmas, because people are struggling to get what to eat, we have to lose so many lives of Nigerians, both in Ibadan, in Abuja, in Onitsha, and so many places, because Nigerians are desperate to find something to eat. Now, if you have taken the advice that civil society have given, that please protect the protests, we will not probably have the kind of scenario we have today. Secondly, if the government have not determined that they must crush the protest, then probably you will not see the kind of determination that some of the overzealous policemen have done, perpetuated their action, thinking that they are doing favor to the government or they are doing something for the government to be impressed. Invariably,
crush. You think that they try to crush it?
Yeah, they were, of course, the idea of what they were doing. Didn't you see how some of them, they carry this thing they were doing like a film, like Rambo,
What I remember in
they
Abuja,
were captured in the news.
In Abuja here, there was a problem, with first agreement of venue. The government of the day says, protesters can only protest in the national stadium. Just a moment. The protesters can only protest in the national stadium. Protesters said, no, we want Eagle Square.
Even that decision is unconstitutional, because the liberty of Nigeria to move anywhere he likes is constitutional. And so that is the beginning of the provocation. You see, we are sitting down here talking about people died or people didn't die. Have we looked at the cause why people trooped to the road? If we were able to have good means of transportation in the manner you have in civilized society, if we have affordable food in the market in the manner people have it in another clime, if we have employment opportunities and employment are not being sold to the knowledge and hearing of government, if graduates are employed, our opportunity of graduates having meaningful things to do like artisan, mechanic, and what have you, will a man or a woman who is duly, fully engaged have the time to go to the road and protest about hunger? Do we have, with profound respect, social amenities for the aged? Do we have a hospital that you can walk to today with gunshots and you are treated? Are we not living in a society where people who are in government are lawless with profound respect, driving against traffic and nothing happen? It's only here that somebody who is just an ordinary councillor comes with the authority of arrogance of power and thinking that nobody again exists. So I think that we need to discuss about why Nigerian protests. We need to, because I said it with all respect, they confine them to Moshood Abiola Stadium.
Yeah.
Then they got order of court that was targeted at persons who were not parties to proceedings. At that stage, we were making our judicial arm a laughing stock, because when you are to make an order, the principle of law is very clear. It strives that no order can be made against persons who are not party to the case. Who were the parties that the order were made? Who knew who was going to be on the road for you to get an order? So when Alwa talked about provocation, I think there was a provocation putting more pepper to the injury.
Yeah, but let me get you straight. I mean, are you saying that protesters can protest anywhere they please?
No, not. Where is the law that they cannot enter the, what do you call this one?
National Stadium.
Not National Stadium.
The Eagle Square.
Eagle Square. Didn't you see those who were said to be protesting in favor of government, protesting there?
Nothing happened to them.
Did anything happen to them? Did you not see that even at that time of protest, people who claimed to be counter-protester came and were attacking those who were protesting? So all of this, with profound respect, is a failure on the part of those who have responsibility to ensure that the protest does not turn ugly. And so when there is a deliberate provocation for an already hungry man who wants to show you that he's hungry, anything can happen. So there was a mismanagement on the part of authority about that protest, because you know, and it's in the constitution which you swore to uphold and defend, that the right to protest is constitutional. So as a police institution who therefore have responsibility to detect, protect lives and property, you must then have your management acumen properly put on the highest alert that A, B, C, D will happen. If it does happen, how do we manage it? So when you come out in a manner suggesting that nobody can do anything in a society when everything is allowed to be done by law and within the bound of law, and you are provoking it, then human beings are bound to react. So for me, if you ask me to sit as a citizen of this country, it was a failure on the part of those who have responsibility to manage that protest in a way that it should not degenerate, that led to the degeneration of that protest. And when you see the people that in Kano, you saw the protest degenerating to burning down of houses, and you see the people that were arrested were minor. And then, like you rightly pointed out in the intro, we were told that those people who were produced before the court were master degree holders with wives and children. It's only I don't know how to put it, but you can only fool those who have no reasonable sense. But those of us who saw those children, malnourished, being fed in the court, and for which Mr. President intervened, and for which the Honorable Attorney General promptly filed an application for what we call nollie, and they were discharged. Are you saying that the police do not know that those people are not supposed to even be brought to open court? They are supposed to be taken to a court.
The question is, should it have ended there? If I mean, these people at the very top, the president intervened, the attorney general filed a nollie, should it have ended there?
Yeah, that is the reason why we find the police action against Amnesty International and other Nigerians very ridiculous, dismissing Mr. President directives. Mr. President had rightly acknowledged and actually expressed the worry and the pain to see these minors languishing, which has created international bad image and reputation, because it was in CNN, Sky News, everywhere.
And then Mr. President, with profound respect, owns Nigeria responsibility not to continue the system of impunity. You talk about NSAS protests. There were deniers that nobody died, but subsequent evidence shows otherwise. So why is it that when people go to power, they prefer to tell Nigerians what appears not to be correct truth than to talk about the truth and admitting and finding solution to it? Because Mr. President's speech or the broadcast to the nation or whatever it is acknowledge that all was not well. If I were to be Mr. President, I will match my words with action. The Inspector General of Police and all police hierarchy must be ordered to investigate what happened. Who provoked it? Is it politicians or any other wealthy Nigerian that does not mean well for the government? Who were the thugs that came to disrupt the protest? Who were the people protesting? How come it degenerates? It should be like the Oputa panel, what I call, borrowing the language of Chief Jebediah, opundential. Let us see it. What is it that we are keeping secret? And things are going haywire in this country.
Well, I'm about to make opudential this conversation because I know that Ayo would also like to come into this conversation. Ayo.
Well, thank you, Mark. I was thinking that, particularly the two gentlemen with you there, knowing the parameters that we as citizens also should be working. Let me begin with you, Mr. Rafsanjani. If you can hear me.
I'm not hearing him.
Can you hear me now? Hello, can you hear me?
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
It's coming.
We are hearing.
All right, okay. So I was hoping that at least we also should be able to find a way to draw some lines as citizens. At the end of the day, let's be real. Every policeman, every security agent is a citizen of Nigeria, at least as at now. So, Mr. Rafsanjani, if we look at it from our own perspective as a people, how well would you say we have fared? Because there is this thing that the police say, and I don't know if you agree with them. Security is everybody's business. Do you agree with the police?
Well, just to let you know that we are absolutely, in agreement that, the security, Nigerians, every Nigerian must support government to secure and protect and ensure that everyone lives safe. So therefore, I share the views that security is a collective responsibility. However, there's a lead people who are specialized.
I do get that. I'm coming somewhere. Just a second.
To do that.
Just a second. I do understand that. I just want us to see how well we as a people have covered that flank. Not that the police does not have its own faults. I mean, it's well known. It's a general knowledge. I mean, the police has its job cut out for it. And over the years, from as far back as at least 10 years ago, I can recall a campaign had carried on for 10 straight years that boiled over in 2020. And of course, we all saw what came up as a result of it. I'm just asking if we as a people, both in the local levels, in the suburban parts of the country and in urban Nigeria, we've been able to cover that flank of the citizens, we the citizens who are not gun carrying security agencies or even any law enforcement agent at all, if you think we have been able to cover that flank well enough.
Well, let me speak for many civil society organizations. When we look at the conditions of police, the welfare and their promotion and their safety, we actually canvassed and advocated for improved amendment of the Police Act. There are many number of policemen who were due for promotion. They were not promoted. There were a number of injustice even within the policing system in the country. Civil society stood by the police. Even up to now, we are still supporting the police in many ways because we believe that they are Nigerians and whatever they are doing it for the sake of Nigerians and the Nigerian people. However, because of the many wrong recruitments that have gone, people who should not even be in the police in the first place, they have been recruited with the poor training, and therefore they did not even understand the basic human rights in their operation because there's no that kind of training to even make them understand that, look, you are not only recruited to kill people, you are also recruited to ensure that you provide the necessary safety and support to the Nigerian people. And you are not recruited to come and do extortion, the outright and ridiculous extortion you see in Nigeria. Every street you go in Nigeria, they have barricaded it, and if you don't give money, you will either be delayed, or you will see even the worst of it. That is not the kind of thing that we want to be saying. And we have been advocating for increased budgetary allocation to Nigerian police. Look, even on this budget, we have been canvassing to the National Assembly that they must increase the budgetary allocation. So we are doing a lot to support the police, and many of them, we know they are gentlemen and women, and they are doing their work, in a very responsible manner. So the bad egg that are over exaggerating or that they are overdoing things, thinking that they are impressing the IG or they are impressing the government, that is not the issue that we can contend.
Okay.
Look, just last month I participated in one protest somewhere, even in abroad, and the police were actually guiding the protesters. But in the case of Nigeria, it's like you are an enemy of government. You don't like them, and the same policeman, tomorrow when he retires, he will be crying for his entitlement, that he's not able to get his pension. He's not able, if he dies, his family will not be able to accept. Look, the injustice is what we are fighting, and we want to, the police to actually be a police that can actually, be proud anywhere, and Nigerians can continue to support them. Today, if you have any case, if you go to police station, you are in trouble. Many Nigerians, they don't want to go to police station because you brought a case and you are now going to be the victim. You have to even pay all sorts of things. So I went to IG, because IG, I know, is a well-respected person, and many police officers, DIGs, they are very well-trained and well-respected people. Please, those people that are spoiling the work that you are doing, IG, please and please show them the way out. They cannot be speaking on behalf of the police and then you are coming to counter Mr. President. That is very disrespectful. That is completely unacceptable. Who are you to come and counter Mr. President?
Okay. Well,
as a policeman.
Well, Mr. Kutakwa, one of the things that has also happened as a result of this, you would also recall, is that the police has since responded to the issues, that were raised, by Amnesty International. And of course, as would be expected, a number of issues have been raised by the police, and they are also saying, that at the end of the day, the idea that the police officers should respect and protect the rights of the people they serve is not something that can be argued. But I'm sure you have seen the response of the police. What's your take, Mr. Kutakwa?
The Human Rights Commission, was even...
The question is for Mr. Kutakwa, please, Mr. Sanjani. Yes, please go ahead.
Before I answer your question, you ask a fundamental question that demands a forthright answer. Security is the business of everybody. Why is everybody shy away from the security situation in Nigeria? The answer is very simple, and they are inherent in the answers that Mr. Awal had given. Now, what happened to a citizen that sees that ABCD is planning to execute kidnapping and he reports to the police, and the next thing is that citizen himself becomes a victim of kidnapping? And so the Inspector General of Police and the hierarchy of the police must conduct a thorough integrity tests amongst all the rank and files of the police and police officers to see that they are on the same page with the citizen, that they want peace in this country. A situation where you report to a man or a woman who have responsibility to detect, to investigate and punish, prosecute crime, and the person turns around to use your information as a commercial something, should be. So we need to find out, do we really have the kind of police that can police the society without inducement, without corruption, without the police finding that avenue of his job as a means of survival? Because that takes me to the welfare of the police. For me, the Nigerian police seems to have been neglected in terms of funding, in terms of even expertise. We have created many security agencies that are competing with the police, and the welfare of those security agencies are more enhanced than that of the police. Now, coming to the question you have asked, for me, the Nigerian police are just hiding under the excruciating pains they go through to visit their angers on the citizen. For me, there must be outright truth that they are, if you go to some places today, you will see that the barracks of the police are not habitable. You see them. So they have a point to be seen to be doing their job, but they are not doing it well. And they are not doing it well because the environment is not conducive for them to do it well. Or they have decided not to do it well because they find the other means of getting something from the citizens.
Well, Mr. Okutakwa, I'm not sure you have seen my apologies for butting in. I'm not sure you have seen the report or the response of the police. Part of it says that the police is blatantly denying all of the allegations of Amnesty International. As a matter of fact, they said, and I quote, the NPF, Nigeria Police Force, strongly believes that this misleading publication undermines the trust and confidence it has worked diligently to build with Nigerian citizens and residents. The force further underscores that such claims harm the reputation of the organization and demoralizes its officers who risk their lives to protect the public. Mr. Rafsanjani said the other time that a good number of policemen are doing a good job, but yes, there are certain officers who are only out to impress their bosses. So perhaps that's the angle from which the police is speaking. Mr. Okutakwa.
Look, what reputation have they built by their conduct of those they sent out to represent them? Because there is what we call the eggshell rules in law. You take your victim as you find it. If you send foolish, profound respect, I mean no insult, foolish policemen on your behalf who behave foolishly, they have damaged your reputation. And so, if they want their reputation repaired, then they must send policemen and women of impeccable character. But let me say this, the Amnesty International report was built on reports of other agencies of government, Human Rights Commission, the newspapers, who are of Nigerian origin. So my problem is we should be able to admit that something is wrong, find solution to it. We need to build a police institution that is independent, that have good reputation, of good relationship with Nigerian citizens. But today, the relationship of Nigerian citizens and police is like cat and dog. It's like fire and petrol. Indeed, you must be aware of many lawyers that have been arrested, detained, not only by the police, but by other security agencies. If you go, I've made it a point of duty, I don't go to police, because once you come there, your clients will be the one to suffer. Why should it be so? When the law says, if you are under investigation, you are entitled to a lawyer of your choice, the lawyer should go there. So this thing is about attitude. And we need Nigerian state that has peace, that is peaceful, that has room for investment. If we go back to memory lane, we are gradually descending to a state of nature where the mighty is right and life is becoming brutish and nasty, and there appears to be no place for industry. And so for me, we need to build the reputation for the police, but the only person who can build that reputation for himself is the police.
Well, quite a lot that you have said there. Mr. Rafsanjani, I don't know, do you want to also intervene in the relationship between Amnesty International and security agents? Because sometimes, I mean, as you also rightly highlighted, the National Human Rights Commission also released a similar report, but there hasn't been this level of backlash. Do you think that this is based on, past history and their relationship?
The Amnesty International has not abused or attacked or undermined, Nigerian state or Nigerian police. All that Amnesty International is calling on the government is that protect the lives and property of Nigerians as enshrined in the Constitution and various, international treaties and conventions that Nigeria has committed to. Those who are violating the rights and engaging in impunity, those are the ones who think that amnesty is a problem to them. But let me also remind them that if you think you must build injustice, tomorrow that injustice will visit you. Those people who have perpetrated this act of atrocities and who are also dismissing all this, they don't know how they are going to end tomorrow. So therefore, Amnesty International is not a politician. They are not politicians. They have no any allegiance to any political party. We are not any, we have no any foreign agenda, from the director to the cleaner to the board. All of them, they are all Nigerians. I am the chair of Amnesty International Nigeria, and I'm a Nigerian. I don't have two passports. I only have Nigeria, and Nigeria is my project. It's what I put forward. So therefore, the better we seek, like we have seen in other countries, other governments, they sit down with Amnesty International and other civil society organizations in their country to say, how do we improve in our human rights situation in our country? They work closely to even provide them with the training and what have you. And let me tell you, that Amnesty has no any negative thing against government except to call on government to do the constitutional thing. Every time Amnesty International does a report, they send it even to the security agencies that affect that security agencies to clarify and reaffirm. Secondly, when Amnesty International is launching a report, they invite all the security, including the police. They have been attending Amnesty International. It's just this set of policemen that have come and they want to do impressive things, and they are in the process undermining the reputation of Nigerian police. And therefore, I am calling on the IG, because let me say, IG, I believe you will be able to listen and take appropriate action. He should caution those who say they are speaking on his behalf, because they are damaging him.
Okay. Well, I think it's a fine place to leave it, gentlemen. We're totally out of time on this particular issue. We'll wait to hear from the side of the Nigeria police as to what exactly,
psychophancy.
Yeah, what exactly has informed their reaction to the report that Amnesty International has done. But gentlemen, we have to thank you so much. I mean, I really admire this tie.
Thank you very much. I'm Nigerian.
Surprisingly this morning. Jibril Okutakpa is a senior advocate of Nigeria, and Mr. Anwar Afsujani is the executive director, CISLAC. Gentlemen, thank you once again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, it is top of the hour now. We're going to our studios in Lagos, where John Mekwa will be bringing us Business Morning on Sunrise Daily.
And it's time to do 30 minutes of business. Welcome to Business Morning on Sunrise Daily. I'm John Mekwa. We'll start from the global space as usual. Oil prices rose for a second day after a larger than expected decline in U.S. crude oil stockpiles added to supply concerns stoked by the United States sanctions against Russia. That started earlier this week, and we saw price surging because of that. Now we see Brent this morning has hit $82. It's been a while since we've had this level. Gained 0.4%, $82.33, and WTI is $80, yes, 36 cents. It also gains 0.4%. Prices rose after U.S. Energy Information Administration reported that domestic crude oil stocks fell for the 7th time in a row last year. And that's the largest or longest declining streak since July. Global oil supplies are expected to tighten in the months ahead as fresh U.S. sanctions on Russian oil producers and tankers have sent Moscow's top consumers, mostly China and India, looking for replacement for that. The latest round of sanctions could disrupt Russian oil supply and distribution significantly. And the International Energy Agency says that its monthly oil market report on Wednesday, this was part of the information that they shared. Now, latest report from OPEC shows that Nigeria's crude oil production for December 2024 remains steady at 1.49 million barrels per day. However, the Vice Chairman of African Energy Council, Dr. Chinan Dikwa, raises concerns over low demand that's fueling lower prices as output increases. But I guess some of that has changed, even though we do not know how long that will last. We're already talking about the sanctions from the United States to Russia oil, which has sent price rising. This morning we see Brent there at $82 plus. Let's look at the Naira now, how it fared yesterday. Depreciation was recorded on the NAFEX window, lost 1 Naira 43 kobo at the beginning of the trade. NFEM saw more demand also. That's this. So that lost 0.10% because there was high demand, especially at the beginning of it, to close at 1,549 Naira 20 kobo. NAFEX closed at 1,555 Naira. After it lost 0.09%. For the CBN window, we saw 1,550 Naira was the close. But I guess I have to say that on the parallel market yesterday, it crossed 1,600. And of course, the parallel market is where most Nigerians easily access FX. But these are the official windows, and these are the closing numbers for those different windows. Now, yesterday, headline inflation number came out, and thankfully, the NBS website is back and working. It's experienced, that's the numbers experienced increase, slight increase to 34.8% for the month of December. It's on festive demand, but as we would see, it's a marginal rise of 0.2%, because November it was 34.6%. So primarily, it was driven by demand for goods and services during the festive season, but not as much as economists had expected. Now, core inflation went up to 29.28% from 28.75%. However, food inflation rate declined, yes, surprisingly, to 39.84% from 39.93% in November. The rise in food was caused by increases in prices of tubers, alcohol, grains, and fish. So there we have inflation numbers declining at a slower pace. And in December also, of course, that is a major topic for Nigerians. And with the rebasing of both the CPI and the GDP, we'll see how that goes. Now, it's a season of economic forecast because we're still in January, so we've seen a whole lot of companies, setting out what they think the year would look like. Now, one company that has done that is ProShare. Yesterday, there was a meeting of stakeholders organized by ProShare as they shared what they think could happen this year. And their focus was on the $1 trillion economy, which is a proposal by the present administration. And they see that perhaps we're close to that, looking at outcome of the rebasing of the GDP and the CPI. The numbers are expected to be shared by the NBS at the end of this month. But they discuss some of their findings as we head towards that $1 trillion economy.
Gaps in the governance architecture able to deliver a capital markets supported economy. Personally, I am particularly keen to see such an engagement as we have today to identify the nexus between an area I consider very important, which is the household, something I consider to be the common denominator in an economy. That how does all these numbers help the household so that it can support consumption in the country and also be able to energize the stagnated retail investor space to create value in the economy. More importantly, I observe two issues I hope the panelists and the public will take up as well. In our explorative interpretation of possibilities, we had a lot of considerations to overcome, which we believe the MBS would consider, confront, and contend with. They, unlike us, have the responsibility to resolve this pain and flashpoints. That being said, our calculations relied on publicly available historical GDP data and an interpretative understanding of the fixed base methodology in contrast to the chain-linked methodology of the National Bureau of Statistics. The outcome of the independent explorative rebasing calculations would suggest that Nigeria may come in at above 400 billion, or precisely about 409 90 billion, making it inch closer to a 1 trillion economy than was previously thought. We proceed that achieving this goal would require an appointment of the required GDP growth rate, as Tosi and his team would also present. The targets they provide means that we can only deliver on those things if we re-strategize, repurpose, and refocus the domestic capital market.
So Nigeria's economy forecast and inflation, of course, is top on the list in the country. Now, let's have that conversation with Dumebi Oluwole. Dumebi Oluwole is a senior associate with financial derivatives company. Hi, Dumebi. Good morning. Yeah, so FDC missed it again.
What do you mean?
No, because FDC said inflation will hit 35, yes, but we see the number from MBS.
That's 4.8.
Yes.
But I mean, these things happen. It happens with forecasting, right? You wouldn't always get it right all the time, especially when you consider the fact that we are using like things that are happening in Lagos State to try to forecast things that would happen nationwide. We're also using like obviously historical inflation, historical CPI numbers also forecast the trend. So, but the direction, I think, is what is more important to look at, and the month-on-month trend, which we were actually spot on with. The direction of inflation, it did rise again, maybe by not as much as we anticipated, but the important thing to note here is that in December, inflation actually rose. And I think one of the reasons why we didn't see as much of an uptick with what the NBS had with the actual inflation numbers as opposed to what FDC projected was 25.2, it's because we factored in to an extent a sharper rise in food prices. But to an extent, we did see that food prices were almost relatively the same going in from the end of November.
The demand was not as much as expected.
Well, they're not exactly. So it's because the huge shocks that we experienced in November going into December were not so prominent by the middle of December entering into the end of the year. And the Naira did actually appreciate as well in December.
Yeah, so one of the things stability in the value of the
exactly.
Naira.
So one thing to consider is actually the coalition period by the NBS. So the NBS typically would do their survey within the first 2 weeks of the month. So if you are forecasting with things that have happened almost maybe between the end of November, we're using into the first week of the month, you might not be able to capture some other things that will be happening.
Because for December, we know that most of the activities towards the end.
Yes, towards the end of the period
until the new year.
Exactly. And to an extent, we didn't see that sharp rise in commodity prices. Petrol prices as well kind of slowed down at the end of the year. So those are some of the reasons why we're seeing like the increase in
not so much
of an increase.
So what happens with this rebasing? Because it's not just the GDP that is getting rebased now.
Yes,
the CPI is also getting rebased. Yes. I wonder how this will affect the numbers. I mean, if we're to be realistic, I want to believe it will be more. It will show more price increase because some new commodities will be captured into the basket.
Yeah, I mean, so the rebasing exercise typically supposed to happen every 5 years for GDP. For inflation, when you look at the IMF's consideration for actually rebasing exercises, a lot of times it should happen within that same period. But the reference period or the reference year typically would differ. So for the GDP aspect, we do expect that when you rebase the GDP, because you're coming closer to economic realities, the expectation would be that the numbers would actually increase, right? But because of the shocks that we saw, 2020, 2022, even 2023 going to 2024, we might not see a significant increase in nominal GDP numbers compared to what happened the last time we did a rebasing exercise. But following on with the CPI, was the last time we had any change to our CPI was in 2009, right? So we're looking at the new rebasing exercise that's about to happen. The new base year that the NBS is planning with is 2024. And what this means is that all of the
That's for the CPI.
That's for the CPI.
For the GDP is 2019.
2019, yes. And what this means is that we will definitely see a significant decline in inflation numbers nominally. And the reason why that is because we're coming from a high shock period. I'm coming from a very high base. The average inflation in 2024 was 33.3%. And if you coincide that with where we are right now, we're not having any reforms going on right now. Petrol prices are somewhat stable, diesel prices are somewhat stable, electricity tariffs are still, the value of the naira is somewhat stable. What this means is that on a nominal level, inflation is going to significantly decline.
But would that capture the reality?
So that's where I'm going. So what
because
this now means
we have
is
this issue with unemployment since the new methodology was employed.
And you're very spot on with that. So that's where I'm going, because what this rebasing exercise will now mean is that even though we have a more robust consumer basket, we will not begin to start seeing all of these items show forth in inflation numbers until maybe 2026, going to 2027, because we're starting from a very high base, and we will not yet be able to factor in the impact of all of these new commodities and new reconstituted inflation basket. We will not start seeing the impact of that on the nominal inflation number. Now, on terms of policy side and what this means for stakeholders, what this basically means is that we will start to see inflation numbers be very far from the reality of consumers and from businesses, right? So, and what this also means is that it will definitely have an impact for strategic planning for investors and business owners, because now you're seeing inflation numbers that are probably going to hover around 20 to even to an extent, to be very fair, 15 to 20%. You're going to see inflation numbers hovering around that. Meanwhile, your cost of operations are still very high. Your cost of operations are still very, very high. The other thing to also consider here is when you look at the rebasing exercise, one of the things that's also changing is items in the inflation basket. So that number has reduced from 50 to 40. From 51% really to 40. And what that now means is that the contribution of food items to general inflation might also decline. Now, even though there are other items that we see the NBS putting adding into this weighting exercise, for instance, restaurants and stuff, we also need to consider the fact that the average Nigerian, right, still earns below or still spends below $2 per day. And what this means is that you have about 60% of the population that most likely are not going to restaurants to buy food to eat on a regular basis, and so that gives somewhat, it will definitely kind of skew the inflation numbers. But I think the more important thing here is just to kind of see how all of this will play out, because we're all watching and waiting to see what the new inflation numbers will be. The hope is that we will not have a case of what's happening with the unemployment numbers, with inflation numbers, where that trust deficit between the actual numbers and the reality will become too stark that we're not able to
well, we hope so, but you know, the thing is, at least we have the example of the unemployment numbers data, you know, to talk about. Unemployment is about 4%. I mean, who do you tell that in Nigeria that unemployment is at 4%? And about 96% of Nigerians are employed. You know, it just doesn't capture the reality. So if we start seeing that with inflation number, then, you know, we're talking of bridging the gap between the government and the governed, you know, reducing the lack of trust. I mean, that's just unfortunately going to increase that. But as you said, wait and see. I think it's the 31st that they said they will release it. So hopefully,
we get to see what those numbers are saying.
We'll see what those numbers and how real it is to the people. But thank you so much,
thank you for
your time this morning. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, talking about the rebasing, preliminary data released by the National Bureau of Statistics shows that real estate is now the third biggest sector in Nigeria. It has surpassed oil and gas to become the third largest sector. We'll talk about that, what it means for players in that sector, and a whole lot more after this break. Just stay with us. So while we're talking about rebasing may not capture the reality when it comes to measuring inflation, some sectors are happy. The real estate is one of that. The sector expanded by 46.52% in nominal terms in the third quarter of 2024. And now the NBS says it has overtaken oil and gas to become the third largest sector in the country. Let's discuss this with a stakeholder in that sector, Dr. Oluwatosin Olatunjoye. He is the Chief Executive Officer of Xylux Group. Dr. Olatunjoye. I have this other name. Olatunjoye, thank you so much for joining us on the program this morning. So, I mean, when a lot of people hear real estate has overtaken oil and gas as the largest, what does it mean for you as a stakeholder in that sector?
All right, so you realize that as a stakeholder in that sector, we are happy to see that report because it means that real estate is growing. It means sustainability. So, and if you look at it in the country, when it comes to real estate, it's as if we are still scratching surface because we are not yet there. And not being there yet, we are already having some data that shows that the real estate sector is the third largest. So it means that it's a market that is booming. So as time goes on, it's going to be a market that, you know, a lot of people will make money from it. And in terms of appreciation, if you look at it, real estate has been the market that everyone in the country have been able to testify to it because it's only the market that keep appreciating every time without depreciating. And okay, go ahead.
But it means, I mean, you stakeholders, you players in the industry are making more money.
Yes.
But we still have a large housing gap. We still have houses at least high cost.
Yes.
For a lot of Nigerians.
Because if you look at it, in 2023, the contribution of real estate to the GDP is about 5.58, the entire 2023. And in 2024, because of the reduction in the purchasing power of the economy, we're all thinking that probably the real estate sector will be low. But meanwhile, last year also, based on the third quarter report, we are still 5.43 in the GDP contribution. So what that means is that a lot of people are interested in buying real estate. But the challenges they are having is basically affordability and flexible payment plan and a long-term duration to pay. So if we can solve these 3 points, then the housing deficit that we have at the moment between 20 million to 28 million can be reduced. People need affordable housing. People need housing that they can easily pay for. And with a long
but
time.
doesn't the sustenance of that value, doesn't it just say it's because the assets or the houses are more expensive? It doesn't mean that more people have acquired houses. It just means that perhaps the assets are more expensive. So maybe some people can buy 3 houses, the cost of 3 houses, you can now use the same fund for 2 houses. So I mean, it's just because of the drop in the value of the naira.
So if you look at the economy, we have the high, the middle, and the low.
Do we still have middle? Because it seems the middle is lost.
No, there's middle. Because the market that really need housing, the market making up this housing deficit we are talking about is between middle and low. The high ones can afford to buy houses for themselves. And the middle and low, if you look at the income they earn from their salary on a monthly basis, can they easily afford to pay for a particular house they want to own for themselves? No. Because the kind of house that are available in the market are not affordable. So as a real estate developer in the industry in Nigeria, we need to start looking towards building some houses in some strategic location, because you cannot build house in Ikoyi or in Lekki Phase 1 and expect the value of the house to low. No, it is not possible. So we need to start setting up houses in some areas where people can easily afford it and be able to set up a good payment plan for them, and they pay for a long time.
Yeah, we've been having this conversation for a while. We know we should, for instance, being realistic here in Lagos, if you're talking about kind of an area, you'll be looking at maybe Ikorodu or Epe.
Yes.
But people were...
Badagry.
Or Badagry.
Yeah.
But when you connect that to where people actually work, where they have to travel every day, then you see that perhaps a lot of people will not be able to, because there's no easy linkage. So that's on the one hand.
Okay.
On the other hand, you have the payment plan. I'm sure you are an investor.
Yes.
You want to be sure that you're going to get your money back, not just your capital, but also your interest, your benefits, getting involved in that business. And where do we see that kind of plan? At the end of the day. And by the time you look at even the installment payments, in reality, an average Nigerian cannot afford it. That's the truth.
Okay, so taking it from the first point you said, in terms of the distance from where people come from to another. Let's look at London, United Kingdom, for instance. you realize that a lot of people travel from a long distance to get to where they are going, because there's a means of transportation that get them closer to their workplace as quick as possible. So this is where government intervention needs to come in. And the government are really trying to bring up some other means of transportation for people to move from one location to another. So if there are good infrastructure, if there are good rail system, and even water transportation that can easily take me from, if I'm living in Ikorodu, does not mean I should pass through the main road to get to island. Do you know that if you go through the water from Ikorodu to Lekki phase 1, you will just use like 10 to 15 minutes to get there? But where about the means, the investment in that regards that will make people to be able to get there on time? So we need government intervention to be able to come in also to put infrastructure that will make people to move from their affordable homes to wherever they are working, because it's not everybody that can afford to live on the in Lekki phase 1, Ikeja, Magodo, all those places. No. So I think that will solve the first point that you're talking about.
Then the other point, the payment plan. So
the payment plan, in that regards, we need, yes, people need to have a long payment plan, because there was a time I did a study. At Zealous Group International, we have research departments that, we make sure that we do research on a daily basis. So we realize that it's not that people don't want to buy houses, but they need an house that will give them easy payment plan that will fit into their income. So if you have a 10 years mortgage, that what you need to be paying on a monthly basis is maybe 200,000 naira on a monthly basis, you're earning 500,000, you want to own a home. So our mortgage system also still needs to improve so that we can do more better.
Has your research looked at building materials? Because I know that's at the core of the expensive houses that we have. Perhaps if we had more locally produced raw materials, it could reduce the end price of this asset.
All right, so in the building materials, yes, you realize that we heard sometimes that some people use bamboo to do their decking. So is it, I want to believe that it is not all housing that you can use such method to build. So from my own research, it shows that we need to start looking towards cost efficiency, in the sense that most of the materials that take a lot of money from us as a developer are just 4 materials. The number 1 materials is the cement. Then we talk about the iron. Then we talk about diesel. Diesel is also part of it. Then the finishing material. So we need to start bringing in investors that can locally produce all these materials and be able to get them at a cheap price. And getting them at a cheap price means that we're going to save the cost of importation.
All right, we hope that soon we will see that. And I believe investors like yourself should be able to move that. Let's start doing building materials locally
to achieve that.
All right, Dr. Oluwatosin Olatunjoye, District Executive Officer of Zealous Group. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right, so that's much we can take on this side of Sunrise Daily. We head back to the Sunrise Daily studio. Laddie Williams will be back at 1 p.m. You'll be here. I think he has a surprise for you, something new with the market. I'll leave that to him to unveil. All right, well, back to the Sunrise Daily studio. I'm Ini John Mekwa. Have a great day.
This is Tengebe community in Zurmi local government area of Zamfara, where last Saturday's airstrike tragedy led to the death of 16 persons. The Nigerian Air Force fact-finding team is in the community to investigate the incident. The team, led by Air Vice Marshal Edward, inspects the sites of the airstrike and interacted with locals to gather first-hand information. He also met with the community leader who guided them around the area, including the scene of the airstrike.
Our youths are always proactive. Once they hear of bandits attacking our community, they come out to defend us and chase the bandits away, even at great risk to their lives. On that fateful day, the youth and vigilantes confronted bandits and drove them into the bush. They returned home afterward, and as I instructed them to park their motorcycles, we suddenly saw an aircraft overhead. It dropped bullets that unfortunately hit some of them. Well, what happened was an act of God. Furthermore, what we need is protection from the bandits who constantly attack us.
The Director of Coordination and Cooperation in the Civil Military Relations Branch of NAF Headquarters, Air Vice Marshal Edward, explained that the team is tasked with the responsibility of uncovering the facts surrounding the incident.
There were points of impact where obviously whatever type of ammunition that was used impacted the ground based on the size of the crater we saw on the ground, and some of the sharpness we've also been able to recover showed that indeed the impacts on some of the destroyed buildings we saw, some of the branches of trees that were also shown to us. We intend to go back with some of those evidences. Definitely they will undergo forensic examination, and it will help us to come up with a very, very something much more useful that the Chief of Air Staff will use to make his own informed decision.
The NAF team reassured the community of their commitment to conducting a thorough investigation into the airstrike and implementing measures to avoid future tragedies.
Oh yes, indeed. Yesterday was the Nigerian Armed Forces Remembrance Day, but while the entire country was marking that particular incident, you know, very solemn and very reflective on the lives of members of the Nigerian Army lost in the line of, not just the Army now, the Nigerian Armed Forces lost in the line of duty. This was also happening in a community in Zamfara state where it would seem that there was an accident, so to speak, where lives of civilians were lost as a result of perhaps misinformation, perhaps it's unclear really what it is, and that's what the Nigerian Air Force is investigating, led by Air Vice Marshal Edward Gapquet, who met with the community leader there, Alhaji Audu Sarkin Yaki. We understand that 16 Zamfara youths lost their lives in that airstrike performed by the Nigerian Air Force, and that they were not bandits. You heard the leader of that community there, you know, speaking and saying a thing or two. These are the kinds of things oftentimes that people say can affect the level of patriotism people feel towards the Nigerian Armed Forces, and has the capacity to diminish it. But should it, and what can we all do to make sure that this doesn't happen, particularly those in government and, you know, those members of the Nigerian Armed Forces who experience incidences like this? Joining us this morning is none other than Mr. Laolu Akonde, who is a former presidential spokesperson, and last time I checked, very much a journalist. Good morning and welcome to the program.
Good morning. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Yeah, that's true. It's 16th of January. It's still the New Year, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, this is what we are, looking at now in the new year. The Nigerian Army, the Nigerian Air Force and Navy, still fighting this ongoing war across different parts of the country. And as a result, we're recording collateral damage from friendly fire, it will be called, but friendly fire still kills, unfortunately. Do you think that we've handled incidences like this, where our citizens have been involved and caught in the line of fire, perhaps erroneously? Have we handled it well over the years?
Well, I will say that this is a very serious challenge that the Nigerian Armed Forces have been dealing with over a fairly sustained period of time. So to the extent that we still have it over and again, it will seem, so that is problematic, and I am also troubled by the losses of life. It's quite, it's something that you cannot take back. Those guys are dead, and it's very sad, it's very troubling. So when we urge the armed forces to try to be more painstaking in trying to deal with the situation, we must commend them for I think they've increased the tempo generally. I think they are giving the bandits and the terrorists some very hard and very difficult time. We should acknowledge that and comment, their actions. But we need to also urge them that it's important to be much more painstaking to avoid these friendly fires, to avoid these collateral damages. And we must commend the leader of the community, how he was able to balance the loss of his people with the understanding of the work that Nigerian military is doing. It's a very, the man did a yeoman's job putting it all together, which is the reason why we also must say that, look, the investigation that the armed forces have commenced, should be thoroughly done, and it should be shared with the public. The outcomes of it should be shared with the public. You see, one of the things that some of our leaders miss about making certain things public is that So when they think that if you make it public, it's going to expose, some of the inefficiencies of the institution. But look, sunlight is the best disinfectant. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. It will raise the awareness. It will raise the standard, the bar for everybody involved. To be much more careful, to be much more diligent. I will not say that they're not careful or they're not diligent, but look, when you put these things out in the open, everybody is on their guards. So it's important to let us know that this is what happened, this is what we found out. Don't let it be something that is going to be concealed, or you're trying to, manage put out the information of what happened honestly. First of all, like I said, sunlight is the best disinfectant. It also builds trust. There must be trust, and that's why you have to commend that community leader. There must be mutual trust between the people and the military, the armed forces, to be able to do this work continuously. Don't forget that we have also had in situations in the past where there are contradictions within the community. Some of them did not feel any government impact, and they become very friendly, wittingly or unwittingly, with some of these bandits and some of these terrorists. And we have had situations where, the activities of the military were compromised, with information from the community. So it's a very intricate weave. So it's important in trying to unravel these things for the benefit of the common good, that the Nigerian military does its job painstakingly, diligently, and then when they investigate these things, they should tell us about it. Well, coming from the history, I think the very first one I remember was the incident that happened in Ran, in Borno State, where the Nigerian armed forces, armed forces now, because the army and the air force were involved in that particular one, but we saw the commander then, who later on became Nigeria's chief of defense staff, trying to remember his name now,
General Irabo, who was then leading Operation Lafia Adole, coming out to, take responsibility and, say indeed they were responsible for this, churn out their regrets. And we also saw later on, much later, in Tundumbiri, I think it was in Kaduna State, where the Nigerian army, again the army, this time around I think it was through drones, attacking the community, attacking that community. I think 85 people losing their lives, acknowledging that this is the situation. We've also seen attempts to try and do some reparation, because the loss of lives then was extensive. And people are wondering, how could this level of misinformation, because they said it was some misinformation, have happened so much so that you couldn't see that there were civilians, ordinary civilians involved in this. So there are big questions as to whether what the processes are like within the Nigerian military. Whenever it is that it gets information, how is it able to verify? Because we've been told several times that these bandits are not in uniform, so they can't identify them oftentimes. They can only say if they're carrying guns or motorcycles. In this instance, we heard there were pictures of motorcycles. But I mean, even ordinary people too use motorcycles. So would you say that they have been able to sanitize their own internal processes so well that this sort of incidences, are being reduced? Or I don't know. I'm looking for the right words to use now. But would you say that they have been able to verify their own internal processes so that this sort of casualties are not recorded?
Well, it's an ongoing. It's an ongoing work, I imagine, and to your point that we've had instances in the past where they have owned up, and what you expect that over time, consistently, that is consistently done, it will also improve the relationship with the people. It will also improve the need for diligence on the part of their own officers, even though that this is going to get out in the public. And I think that we should give them the credit in quickly responding to the situation, meeting with the community and promising to do an investigation. You never know how these things will end up. The community says that, look, those guys were actually vigilante people. We are also trying to go and rescue the situation. The military, the Air Force arrived, according to them, late actually, and by the time they got there,
they have chased out the bandits.
And now these people who chased out the bandits that were
came under fire.
So if that is the situation indeed, it just shows that there is still a little bit of lag in terms of the communication between our armed forces and people on the ground. You can't ever rule out ground intelligence. Especially for some of these air power manifestation, very critical, so that you don't hold, because information can change in 5 minutes, in 10 minutes. The whole situation can change. This may be what happened, we don't know, but what it tells us is that there has to be a little bit more, a stronger intelligence on the ground. So that kind of thing, you will imagine, the community that was saying that, they actually sent them there, and when, they were there when the thing was landed, was being dropped, it tells you that, if there were ground intelligence, maybe this would have been avoided, based on what we know. So we just have to encourage the Nigerian military to be more diligent, to see how it can do its job better. And we trust that they will.
What do you think should be done now?
Well, I think, like I said, this investigation should be thoroughly done. Let's know exactly what happened. Let's know what happened, and that way we can fix the situation. I think the Nigerian military, just like the entire Nigerian security architecture, they need to strengthen their intelligence. They need to strengthen their intelligence.
Yeah, but when I asked that question was more in terms of compensation, because
So once the military has satisfied themselves, the government satisfied themselves about what did happen, there has to be compensation. I think the National Human Rights Commission has done a very good job in documenting these things factually, and that also helps the government to pay compensation.
Well, I know Ayo is waiting to switch to politics. Ayo.
Well, the only political angle I'm looking at, Marwe, is well, should I call it the brickbat between the federal government through the Minister of Information and the Emir of Kano, Emir Sanusi Kaduna, Kano, who was speaking on whether or not he was going to make comments on the reforms being that the president, the federal government has initiated and is going through. And of course, we have heard the response of the federal government saying, we don't need anyone's confidence or feedback or help or whatever. You know, the title of that statement that the federal government put out is actually, we don't need Sanusi's stamp of approval for FG's laudable policies. Well, you're a presidential spokesman, at least you've been one before, so you know how these things go. What's your take, Mr. Akonde?
Yeah, I mean, thank you, Ayo. So, quite a few things. But the first thing is to say to the Emir, you know, His Royal Highness, that there are many of us who admire his sense of patriotism and who also, you know, value the substance of his contributions. So we won't want him to keep silent. You know, I think it was Edmund Burke that said that the only thing that has to happen for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. So, Emir, Your Royal Highness, no, we don't want you to keep silent. That's the first thing. The second thing is that, of course, you know, like the Emir himself said, you know, he's friendly with the people in government, starting from the president all the way. You know, I mean, the Emir of Sanusi is a Lagos man in that sense. So I'm sure that this is a personal fallout, you know, and I think the Minister for Information actually called it, you know, I think shift in loyalty. So, you know, we hope that they can sort themselves out in terms of the personal differences. But the duty and the task that is at hand for both government and all of us who have a voice in this country is to fix the country. And we have to rise above. We have to rise above our personal differences. We have to. We owe it, you know, as especially as members of the elite, we owe it to the people of this country, the majority of the people of this country, to serve them, you know, whether we are in government or whether we are outside government. So I will hope that Emir can sort his differences out with his friends. The third point, you know, that I'd like to make, and the final one, is that the Emir said that they couldn't find people of pedigree to explain what is being done. Now, I want to take it off from there. I don't think the problem is that this government doesn't have people of pedigree. I think the problem is that there has been a failure, a massive failure of coordination. There has been a massive failure of coordination. I don't think the pedigree gets better than the Wale Edun managing finance, you know, Dr. Cardoso in CBN, Bayo Onuga, you know, Sunday Dare doing communication, you know. Now, there are other people, you know, they have Dr. Patel, other people doing, you know, you have the Attorney General, you have excellent people in place. I hope that we can have more of such people, but the greater problem is the lack of coordination in the Tinubu administration. And I'll give you two examples. 5 months ago, the president approved that there should be an import waiver so that food products can come in and deal with the question of inflation. You know, whether that is a good thing or not, the president did approve. 5 months, and it was supposed to be for about 5 months. It didn't take off. It didn't happen. The president directed. That's one example. The second example was the IPs and university lecturers. The president directed, approved that university lecturers should be removed from IPs. It took 10 months for it to happen. What is going on?
I think you might be in a better position, Mr. Akonde, pardon me for buttoning, to explain or help us understand what goes on in such situations. Because I'm sure that even the former President Buhari had from time to time also say, come on, wait a minute. I thought I already approved this. I already gave my word. I already gave a directive. A good number of times. I think I remember 2 clear times. The former president, Buhari, came, organized a meeting with security heads of law enforcement and security agencies that you guys collaborate. Isn't that they didn't hear him the first time? Second time he called this meeting, and until that administration ended, it seemed like nothing happened. And there have been a good number of times, again, you might be able to help us understand here, that the president would approve something, but the people to execute will probably keep it on the table for a while until, for one reason or the other, maybe Laulu goes back to the president and says, President, this thing is still on ground. And the president, hey, hold a minute, what are you talking about, Laulu? I approved this thing 4 months ago. What happens in that kind of situation?
Yeah, so thank you, Ayo. So that is why I described the problem as the problem of lousy coordination. There's no coordination taking place. You know, the president needs to sit down, the secretary to the government of the federation and his chief of staff. He needs to sit them down and say, look, guys, what's going on? Those are the 2 people that are mostly responsible for coordination of government business. In the case of IPs, do you know that the excuse was that the head of service, the office of the head of service said they did not get the memo from FEC on IPs. Okay, that's what they said.
That's a critical one, Mr. Kaneboy. You know, if I listen well to the statement you quoted of Emir Sunusi, he was speaking to people of pedigree, telling people what is going on, not people of pedigree getting the job done. Raising another angle to the question you raised, your observation of collaboration, the challenge of communication, because it would seem like all we hear is government always responding or reacting to the issues and not communicating, taking the ownership of the story before people begin to get exactly what the issues are. So how significant is the problem of coordination? The problem of communication. You've spoken to coordination or collaboration. How significant is the problem of communication, communicating the economic reforms, the difficulties that people are going to get, and the fact that it's going to take X number of days, weeks, months, or years before people begin to feel the impact, the good side of what government is doing?
Right. So you see, the people that are managing communication cannot also be the people that are managing coordination. And if coordination is poor, the spokespeople are going to be struggling forever, to the extent that spokespeople cannot be the one running around to ensure that there is enforcement of presidential directives. So the problem will come face to face with the communication people, and at best they will struggle to try to explain it. Coordination is the very essence that produces effective communication. And some people have said that, look at the economic team. We don't even know, which goes to what Emir is saying in an aspect. We don't even know when do they meet, the economic management team. When do they meet? What do they do? Who is explaining what they are doing? The question of 5 months, the food import waiver that didn't happen, you know, if you had somebody explaining to us, you know, maybe that would have compelled even the internal workings of government, which goes to the first point that I made, you know, in my earlier conversation with Marco this morning. That look, if you don't put certain information out there, people just go down and everybody is just chilling. But when this information is out there and everybody knows that, okay, this is what government wants to do, within 3 months, we want to find out what is happening. Hey, I remember a third example, Ayo. The Oronsoye report last year, early part of last year, FEC and the president said there was an announcement that we will be implementing aspects of the Oronsoye report. What has happened? The last time they had the chief of staff, he couldn't even give a timeline. The SGF, what is going on? A committee was set up. So clearly, The greater problem for me, the way I see it, based on my experience, both inside and outside, is coordination. And you're just going to make the life of the people doing this, the speaking, you're going to make their life a misery if government is not coordinated. Because how do you explain that? It's a struggle. The president needs to sit down, his henchmen, the chief of staff, the secretary general federation, they must sit down and understand what their jobs are. They are failing so far.
Well, one of the things that really stand out for me is what he said about, you know, what the emir said about friendship. He says, you know, they're my friends, but if they don't behave like friends, I don't behave like a friend.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I'm saying to the emir. That look, I mean, you guys take your friendship, brouhaha, go and sort it out. You know, please. You know, we need everybody. We need all hands on deck. I'm urging the emir. And look, emir, we take you very seriously. This is a very serious time in our country.
This is not just an ordinary friend. This is the emir, and his seat has been threatened, so to speak, by people whom he believes are working for the president.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying, that we don't want our disputations, our elite disputations, at a time when there is serious hardship in this country, at a time when Nigeria has a high population of multi-dimensional poor people. This is not a time for us to be exhibiting our you know, our whims and caprices.
Clearly,
you know,
the last word.
And I'm talking to both sides here.
Yeah, clearly the last word has not been heard. Or do you think that the statement of the Minister of Information puts paid to this?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I mean, if we know the emir very well.
One issue I really wanted to take up with you was the issue of Lagos State, but we're out of time. We're totally out of time. And, well, let me quickly sign him off. Mr. Laolu Akonde, former spokesperson, thank you so much for coming on Sunrise Daily.
Thank you so much.
Well, let's take a look at some of the feedback that you have sent to us now. I see this one from Tom Egbele, who says on our first conversation, human rights violation is the most brutal and savage approach used by various law enforcement agents to rein in dissenting voices in Nigeria. It must be made clear to all that wearing of uniforms does not confer an absolutist power on anyone. Enough. That's the view of Tom Egbele.
I'll take this one from Festus Akimboyewa, who says, while police in Nigeria have the reputation for ruthlessly responding to civil protests, Amnesty International's reports are always exaggerated. While the police must be investigated and officers found guilty of torturing and murdering innocent protesters must be prosecuted and punished, Amnesty International must be measured and objective in its reporting if it must be taken seriously.
Well, that's where we leave the program today. Thank you so much for your feedback. I'm Yusuf.
Ayo Makine, have a productive day.